afternoon, everybody. Yeah. Even the dog shook her head at that. I trusted you all there. It's a pleasure to be here at Future Talent 2017. I think without any doubt, the greatest example and certainly the most up-to-the-minute example of trust is Future Talent giving me a microphone for the next 10 minutes or so. I hope you're going to enjoy it. I know I am. Because the sound man, when he put my microphone on, he said, "Don't worry, you don't have to do anything. When you stand at the podium, I'll turn you on." Talk amongst yourselves for the next 9 minutes. I'm all taken care of. What I wanted to do was talk about not the importance, not the nice to, but the absolute essential of putting trust in different people. If anything meaningful is going to be achieved. Now, you can well imagine, I know we had a lot of the chat this morning, you'd think trust has never been in a worse position in our society at the moment. Can't trust journalists, can't trust the media, can't trust politicians. I used to be a journalist. I'm currently a politician. It's not looking good for me. But this is all from opinion polls. But when you look at the opinion polls, actually, the trust in politicians and journalists and the media has pretty much been the same for decades, really. So we should at least reconsider trust. Or perhaps say, on top of all those, can't trust the opinion polls. So, from my experience, that critical importance of trusting different people. Let's briefly take it even further than that. Not just trusting different people, trusting 100% different species. Imagine my first training with my first guide dog. This is nothing more than 100% trust. Putting my life in the hands, or indeed the paws, of my previous black lab guide dog. Imagine day one, you're walking towards a busy road, walk, heart pounding faster, noise of HGV trucks getting louder and louder and louder as you get there. I don't know that dog. That dog doesn't know me. And there's some big trucks we're heading towards. Every sinew in my body is going, this is absolutely off its head. And yet everything I have to do is communicate an environment where I can trust the dog and the dog can trust me. And I have to give positive things. Here we go, keep walking, here we go. Because if I don't create that environment, the dog will spiral down, will have no confidence at all. I have to not just understand a different person, I have to understand what a different species needs, what I need to put in the home, how I need to operate to enable that dog to trust me and me to trust the dog. Couldn't be a bigger relationship of trust. And I knew this from when I first began in sport. We've heard from rugby, we've heard from rowing. I think you'd all agree, now we're on to swimming, and that's the best, right? Although, to be fair, as Catherine's pointed out before, she is clearly higher up the evolutionary chain to me. She's above the water, I'm still splashing around in the swamp, so that tells you everything you need to know about me. But I learned really early on, I had a great coach. He was very different, not a typical coach at all. And he'd come over with all these new ideas from America. In swimming, generally, you do hard yards in the winter, then go into a sprint season in the summer. He'd come over with all of these new ideas from America. Cyclical training, 7-week training, where you do hard weeks 3 and 4, and you race at the end of week 6 or 7 or the beginning of week 1. Utterly different to what any other club was doing. Why would I and my teammates trust him at all? We trusted him because he was open, reliable, communicative, collaborative, and crucially, though he was incredibly different, both in terms of his personality and his approach, we trusted him because he was putting himself out there, putting himself in a vulnerable position. If we failed, he failed. We were able to trust him 100%. When I was lucky enough to be team captain, a similar approach. Everybody in that team having a voice, everybody's voice needing to be heard. If somebody wasn't speaking up, I would enable them to have their say and hear what they were saying. Because imagine the team that I was captain of, people from all countries of Great Britain, people of quite varied ages, people of incredibly different disabilities, and people of incredibly different perspectives and disciplines in the sport of swimming. If we didn't create that inclusive culture, trust would never come through. And without trust, there's no success at all. Now you can say that's all well and good. Swimming was your sport. I was lucky enough to go to 4 games, win a few bits of tin and have a lovely time. That's all good. But you need to test that. Absolutely. 8 years ago, having never stepped on a ski slope before in my life, I decided to take up skiing. Now, what could possibly go wrong? I take the swimming pool, I freeze it, I tilt it to 45 degrees, I put incredibly slippery things on my feet, and I cannot see anything. Trust. I ski with an Italian lady who's done some coaching of blind skiers. She's an ex-racer. She's 10 meters behind me with a radio mic. I'm skiing with a radio receiver. Again, I'm trusting her with my life to call the turns, to describe the ground, to do all of that stuff. I trust her, but I have this terrible duality going on. She's got this beautiful Italian accent. Going on in my ear. Half of me is thinking, that's really rather lovely. And the other half is thinking, but don't die. Don't die. Again, why did I trust her? How was I able to trust her? Because she made the environment. Trust isn't built, environments are created which enable trust to be given. I gave her my trust because of that environment and the communication and the openness she had about how we were going to approach it. Exactly the same when I was lucky enough to run the Paralympic Games for London 2012. How could we get the trust of the British people, the trust of the world's media, crucially, the trust of the athletes? By having that approach where everybody was included, a flat structure with no silos. Everybody was included. Again, everybody had a voice. We wanted everybody to be there, people being able to trust us and become part of that journey. School leavers, long-term unemployed, people who'd never worked at all, ex-offenders, Australians. Everybody trusting us to be part of it because we didn't just say, we need you. We didn't just say we've created a culture where trust can absolutely thrive, but we backed it up by leadership, by role modeling, and by practical examples. A quick example, we needed our games makers, our fabulous volunteers who you saw, to be utterly representative and reflective of modern, diverse Britain. How do you do that? By delivering on that promise, enabling people to give you their trust. To disabled people, they might have said, well, You say you want us to be volunteers. How are you going to make that possible? You know, we've never really had an opportunity. We've found getting into the labour market incredibly difficult. We've often found it's all about barriers. How would we get their trust? One small example, when we did the fleet contract for the cars, we said to the tendering contractors, don't just tell us how you can make those cars accessible for disabled passengers, tell us how you can make them accessible for disabled drivers. So if we had a disabled person to be a volunteer, they could be a driver at games time. One tiny, tiny, incredibly practical example, but something that had never been done at any games before that. How you build an environment, not how you build trust, how you create, lead, and role model that culture and enable people to give their trust because you've demonstrated trustworthiness. To bring us back to the beginning, another example, 100% trust I put in my guide dog. A few years ago, I'm going down the steps into Paddington Underground Station. I'm walking down the steps. Somebody walks straight into me, not a glancing blow, straight into me. Before I could say anything, they said, "What the hell are you doing?" There might also have been another word in that sentence, which we can discuss over drinks later. They said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Never mind that. What the hell are you doing? I've got a guide dog." And they said, "Oh, I'm blind too." What are the chances? I've absolutely no idea whatsoever what that tells us about trust, except we'll talk some more. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Oh, so thank you very much, Chris. Just one quick question from me, and then we'll throw it open. So get your questions ready. The roving mics come to you. So we've heard really from Clive about the system of teamship and the importance of maturity at an individual level. In terms of the kind of relationship stuff you were sharing with us there, Chris, how do we, in organisations, break down the sort of endemic us and them mind? I mean, how do we just get relationships where we start to build them better than we are right now? What would be your bit of advice for the organisations in the room?
Employ me. I'll be around later. No, you hit exactly the right word. It's all about relationships. And this stuff works if you focus on relationships and not transactions. And crucially, constantly, one of the most difficult things it is for us to do as humans is to put ourselves truly, utterly in the shoes of another, to understand their perspective, what they might need, what they could bring. Only through doing that can you create those flat structures, the openness for the conversation, and really get into tricky stuff such as, you know, confirmational bias and all that, which we could talk about a lot more. But absolutely, the word is all about relationships.
Okay. So, questions from the room? Question at the back here, start over here.
Ian Dodds Consulting, the Inclusion Builder. The Harvard Business Review, April 2012, the theme was great teams. And all of the professors who had articles in it agreed that the limiting factor for a great team was interactive effectiveness. Professor Sandy Pentland went as far as to say that interactive effectiveness is more important to a great team than the skills and intelligence of the team members and all of the other factors combined that go to make a great team. Now, by interactive effectiveness, we mean listening to people, checking your understanding, exploring differing ideas and points of view, and so on. And it seems to me, and I want to check this with the three speakers, that for trust, interactive effectiveness is a very important skill indeed.
Who would like to respond to that? Any takers?
That was the longest question. Can you start that again? I'll volunteer. I mean, my views on this is I actually think great teams are made of great individuals. I think sometimes we can overplay the importance of the team stuff. I mean, I'll never underscore the importance of teamwork and all that, but I think if you get every individual really operating at his or her optimal level, the team stuff kind of almost takes care of itself. If you get every individual really looking after them, because in a rowing boat or a rugby team or in Parliament, every individual is very, very different. It's how you manage that person. You get them really working to become that great individual, that the team stuff becomes a lot easier. And I think other members of the team know if somebody's cutting corners or not putting it in, and then it can, in a positive way, kind of get quite, it can kick off at times, if I can use that word. But I just think great teams made of great individuals. You get the best individuals really working, the team stuff kind of takes care of itself.
Great. Thank you. So let's take another question from the floor.
James Wilson. I work for the Victoria and Albert Museum down the road as an OD consultant. So some of the words I've heard you talking around about trust is about building environments and teamship. What happens when somebody makes a mistake?
Ever made a mistake, Chris?
No.
Many. Almost daily. And it's all how that is worked through. It's all part of any journey, and they aren't mistakes, they're learnings along there. So when I had to, quick example, I had to learn to swim again, not being able to see. I knew how to swim, but I didn't know how to swim, not being able to see. And learning it, I'd often get too close to the wall, do the tumble turn, whack my heels on the walls I came over. Great piece of design, though, that when that happened, my head's underwater, so all the swearing gets done and nobody hears a bit of it, so that's okay. Training is all about that journey. They're not mistakes, they're part of a necessary path which should take you to, be it the Olympic final, the World Cup final, the perfect performance that you can do on that day. It's all part of the learning, and there's no sense of blame or anything like that. It's absolutely integral, necessary, vital part of the process, the journey that you're on, the struggle.
And I think that goes back to creating an environment, in that, and I think Dame Caroline said earlier, if you've created an environment where the trust exists, but also the comfort that you can take risks and risk getting things wrong and making mistakes, because that's the only way any of us learn. And it's, ideally, you don't make mistakes in the Olympic final, the World Cup final, but, you've got to have an environment where people feel they can make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes, because actually that's an incredible learning experience.
I think one of my favourite sayings is there's no, in the teams that I kind of run, there's no such thing as a dumb idea. What is almost a sackable offence, if someone's sitting there with a thought and they feel a little bit intimidated or they don't want to say it because they may get ridiculed. I mean, that could be the absolutely killer idea or thought, and you want to just really encourage that, the thought process coming in. Back to my sort of thing on teamship, if everyone's inputting, everybody's inputting without fail, that's the culture that I think you'll grow. And sometimes, we just know if onlys. You look back and go, well, yeah, we won because we know why we won, but also if we lost, to me, losing is acceptable, as long as you can look in the mirror and go, there was nothing else we could have done. There was no if onlys. We took no shortcuts. It does happen in sport. I mean, we even lost to Scotland one year. These things can. this stuff happens, so it can.
You're quite a while ago position.
We were talking about it before. Catherine was at the Scotland game this year.
All right.
Great
Thank
days.
you, Clive. We'll come down here. There's a question up at the back in the gallery.
Hi there. Victoria Livingston, the HR lead for corporate functions at Liberty Global. I just want to say thank you. Very inspirational speeches from all three of you. We've been hearing a lot today about leaders creating trust, and in many of those examples, it's been very top-down. Have any of you gone through experiences yourself where you have had to create trust almost in a horizontal way or in a vertical upwards way? As we often find that in HR when you're supporting leaders, that you have to create that environment of trust, but not necessarily top-down.
Who'd like that? Chris?
Yeah, happy to start. I mean, that's absolutely entirely the approach I took when I was team captain of the swimming team, and exactly and entirely the approach that I and colleagues took when we built the low-cog London 2012 structure. It had to be siloless, it had to be a flat structure if we were going to make good games, great games. There was no choice in that. If we were going to deliver on the vision that had been set out from the bid, absolutely, it was about a flat structure, everybody having a voice, everybody's voice having to be heard, and extraordinary, extraordinary stuff came from every corner and every part of that organisation. No issue as to what job title, what position, what floor anybody was on. Any idea could quickly get operationalised if it was a great idea. And that's what made it. It was absolutely essential, and it's the best thing we did from the outset, because what you experienced in the summer of 2012 would not have happened had we not gone about not structuring an organisation, but creating a culture and an organisation to work in that way.
I think as well, we've all worked in teams, and I think even, in say the rowing team, there's no captain as such, there's no leader, and although we've got sort of coaches and performance directors and thing above it, the team itself is actually much more level, and people have different experiences, and there's sometimes you get a bit of a ranking of success and stuff within that, but what we work really, really hard on is this kind of thing that every single person in that team, doesn't matter if they're, it's the first year in or their 20th year in, everyone brings something that no one else brings, and also everyone leads in some different way. So, we had one of the women's eights, and they sort of, every single girl in that boat all had a leadership role that was actually defined. And, for some it was, and you play to people's strengths. So sometimes it is this sort of time management, as Clive referred to, and keeping things running that way. Sometimes it's, the big ambition stuff. Someone was just like captain of fun. And, you have these different roles. And if you get the right people doing those right roles, absolutely thrive on it. And everyone feels they're bringing something that's really valuable and important that nobody else can bring in this the way that they can. So I think there really is a thing, especially when you've got a sort of flat structure, it's really powerful, because actually, as long as you've got the environment both these guys have talked about, where anyone and everyone should contribute in some way, if you can create that, then you don't need that hierarchy. It really works well.
I think the best way I can, absolutely, in terms of this horizontal structure, it's not, if I use rugby example, it's just not the rugby team. Take the coach driver. I always had saying, I want you to be the best coach driver in the world. Now, it wasn't his ability to drive the coach, it was all his planning and organisation. What happens if we're on the way to the World Cup final and the coach breaks down? Do we, for the rest of our lives, sit here saying we lost the World Cup final because the coach broke down? Or has this guy got everything in place in terms of all the things that happen? What happens on the coach? We had meetings with the players discussing what they wanted from him and all this stuff. He became an absolute key part of the team. And he travelled around the world with us, in terms of making sure, because we saw him as that important. The chef was huge for us, It wasn't just having quality food, having the absolute food, no matter where we were in the world. An army marched on its stomach. That person was absolutely key to the performance of the team. So when you win it, it is just not just the 15 players, it is the whole team. And, I'm proud of everyone who delivered that. And I'll go back to my example of the selection. I'm more proud of those 8 players I didn't pick than I am of the 15 players I did pick, because the way they behaved, they've never, ever criticised me in terms of, because they knew how to operate, because they were part of the team. And it was this wonderful thing when you get that in going, because it does become a really inspiring place. But it takes a huge amount of work, and everybody's got to really, I just simply say, I want to be the best I want you to be the best chef, I want you to be the best coach driver, I want you to be the best fly half. It's the same thing. Great teams made a great individuals, and you know your job, and you've got to deliver to a world-class level.
So I think there's a very powerful point there about everybody having a voice, right? And the academic research is very clear on the wisdom of a crowd comes from the diversity of views, so you need to hear everybody's view. So there was a view in the middle there, if we can offer a microphone in the middle.
One's coming.
There we go.
Oh, hi, Sarah from Virgin Media. Quick question for Clive. I'm sitting here thinking about the Lions tour and how a group of people who typically play against each other, might not necessarily like each other, come together for this great event and to achieve one single goal and very quickly have to get up to speed. So I was wondering if you've got any hints or tips on how quickly to get people collaborative and performing to one single goal at speed and under pressure, I guess.
Yeah, a lot. I was the Lions coach 12 years ago, and we got smashed. So probably not the best person to speak to. To be honest, it's a huge challenge. I mean, I pride myself on, improving individuals, getting the teamwork together. It's just against the time. It's the time you've got together. I mean, the British and Irish Lions should have an amazing team based on what we saw in the Six Nations. There was some, every team had its moments. So we should go with a really strong team. I mean, we all love putting our best teams on paper. But the reality is when you get there, we think the Lions is pretty big in our country. But in New Zealand, who, as you know, the number one team in the world, it happens every 12 years. So if you think it's big, we go every 4 years. They do it every 12 years. So if you're that player or coach who's got responsibility, that they deliver big time. So you've just got to try and get everybody in. I would almost go the opposite of underplay the expectations. The Lions have been there 12 times and lost 11. So it's, the history isn't on their side. And this is probably one of the best All Blacks teams has been. So to actually go there, but you've just got to believe that sport is sport. And I still think you can do the team stuff, but you can do a lot of it before the team gets together. But when you get there, your first game's in about 2 or 3 days' time. So I'll just say that the challenge is huge, and you've got to kind of understand the chances of the Lions being successful, is quite small, just based on the stats and the history, and based on the current New Zealand team. And there's no more than that. But I don't think there's any secret to it. You've got to get the best team out there, underplay it, keep your game plan really simple, because you've got players coming from 4 countries. And if I made a couple of mistakes, I just kind of overcomplicated it. I kind of got into some pretty high-level coaching where it wasn't about that. You had to really just get the best players on the pitch and have a very simple game plan. Then you got a chance.
Cool. Any last questions from the room? Front row where? Oh, up the back there. Thank you.
Hi, just a quick one to say thank you very much. It was really inspiring to listen to you. And my question, also I didn't introduce myself. Hi, I'm Rachel Sky from Sky Art Consulting, and I help organisations through change. So my question is, how do we incorporate trust when we're facing the future of work in an automated environment?
Big question. We've got 6 seconds. Seems a natural gift for you, Chris.
You're very kind. But by believing in everything that's got us through and enabled us to achieve excellent things as human beings, because absolutely the pace of change, the 4th Industrial Revolution, is coming at us at pace. I'm lucky enough to be on the parliamentary group on this subject, so I do like a bit of geeky chat. I am quite a fan of that. We should approach it all with absolute rational hope and optimism, because we are still prime. Robotics, AI, big data, all this stuff of itself is largely neutral. It's the applications, it's the solutions that we address it to, which can enable some absolutely stunning things to happen. This stuff, even one element of it, but in totality, it's this stuff which has the potential, and that potential has got to be realised by human intervention, but this has the potential to truly transform our National Health Service, just as one example, and this goes across everything. Incredibly exciting time to be alive, but it's going to involve absolutely everybody to lean in to that full extent to maximise the benefits for the next generations.
I think he's doing well as a politician in his career. I suggest you don't go to the media, Chris. Thank you very much. So it suffices for me to just thank the sporting royalty on the stage once more. It's an honour.